The Emperor of Mankind is one of the most powerful beings in Warhammer 40,000. He is a 10-foot-tall, golden psychic demigod with abs made of propaganda, hair made of divine shampoo, and the parenting skills of a divorced Roman emperor who thinks emotional support means giving your son a legion of murder goblins and telling him to conquer Belgium. And yet, despite being humanity's greatest genius, greatest warrior, greatest psyker, and greatest source of religious trauma, the Emperor made one mistake so catastrophically stupid that it turned the galaxy into a 10,000-year-long HOA meeting run by corpse-worshipping bureaucrats. So today, we're asking a simple question. What was the Emperor's biggest mistake? Was it creating the Primarchs? Was it treating Angron like a broken Roomba? Was it letting Erebus exist for more than 8 seconds? Or was it something deeper? Because my argument is this. The Emperor's biggest mistake wasn't just being a bad dad. Although, to be clear, he was absolutely a bad dad. 0 out of 10. Needed therapy, gave everyone war crimes instead. His biggest mistake was trying to defeat chaos by hiding it. He created the imperial truth, lied to humanity about the warp, told everyone gods and demons weren't real, then acted shocked when his emotionally unstable sons discovered the forbidden space hell dimension and immediately joined the first Jimbro demon that called them special. This is the story of how the Emperor tried to build a godless empire in a universe where gods are extremely real, extremely angry, and apparently have Wi-Fi access to everyone's daddy issues. Strap in, little lore goblins. This is the Emperor's biggest mistake. To understand why this mistake was so bad, we need to understand the warp. And to understand the warp, we need to go way, way back. Back before the Imperium. Back before the Emperor. Back before Horus had the most famous workplace meltdown in galactic history. We start with the War in Heaven. This was basically the galaxy's first enormous ancient slap fight between the Old Ones and the Necron tier. The Old Ones were these ancient, hyper-advanced, probably smug space lizards who were so good at genetics and psychic space magic that they started creating entire species like they were playing Spore on creative mode. The Necron tier, meanwhile, were a miserable race of cancer-ridden skeleton people who lived under a terrible star and had the general life expectancy of a Victorian chimney sweep. Naturally, they were not thrilled. So the Necron tier made a deal with the Catan, these star-eating gods who promised them immortality. Which sounds great, except it was the Warhammer version of Make-A-Wish, where your wish technically comes true, but now you're a soulless metal skeleton, and the genie is John Cena if John Cena ate sons and hated consent. So the Necrons become immortal robot skeletons, the Old Ones start pumping out psychic warrior species, and the galaxy gets turned into a gigantic blender full of lasers, magic, and bad decisions. Now here's the important bit. The warp was not always the nightmare toilet dimension we know and love today. Originally, it was more like a psychic mirror realm, a parallel dimension shaped by emotion, souls, belief, and consciousness. But then, every sentient species in the galaxy started experiencing fear, hatred, lust, ambition, despair, jealousy, and whatever emotion makes you post "Horus did nothing wrong" in comment sections. All of that emotional sewage poured into the warp. And over time, the warp became less mystical spiritual ocean and more sentient haunted nightclub where the bouncers are made of trauma. This is where chaos comes from. Chaos is not just evil magic. Chaos is emotion weaponized. It is the collective psychic filth of the galaxy looking back at you and saying, "Hey king, want unlimited power and also tentacles?" So when the Emperor later decides, "Actually, we're just not going to tell anyone about this," you can already see the problem. Because chaos does not stop existing because you stopped mentioning it. That's not strategy. That's a toddler hiding under a blanket during a house fire. Now fast forward. Humanity eventually gets its own golden age, the Dark Age of Technology. Which is a hilarious name, by the way, because for them, it was the best time ever. Calling it the Dark Age of Technology is like calling your peak years the sad era when I had a Lamborghini, free healthcare, and robot servants. During this period, humanity spread across the stars, built insane machines, terraformed planets, created artificial intelligence, and generally became the kind of species that could look at physics and say, "That's cute, but what if we ignored it?" They had the Men of Iron, which were basically super advanced AI robot dudes. They had standard template constructs, which were like cosmic instruction manuals that could tell you how to build anything from a tractor to a machine that deletes your enemy from tax records and reality. Humanity was thriving. And then, because this is Warhammer 40,000, everything went completely to hell. First, the Men of Iron rebelled. This was basically Skynet, except instead of Arnold Schwarzenegger, it's a self-aware toaster with a railgun and strong opinions about organic life. Then Psykers started appearing more frequently across human worlds. And Psykers are basically the X-Men, except instead of shooting lasers from their eyes, they accidentally open portals to demon hell when they have a panic attack. Then warp storms erupted across the galaxy, cutting human worlds off from each other. This was the Age of Strife, also known as Old Night, also known as humanity gets put in the cosmic microwave for several thousand years. Planets collapsed, civilizations died, mutants, warlords, aliens, and demons ran wild. Humanity went from Star Trek to Mad Max with churches, cannibals, and psychic migraines. And this is the world the Emperor eventually steps into. He sees humanity broken, scattered, terrified, superstitious, and vulnerable to chaos. And to be fair to Big E, he correctly identifies the problem. Chaos feeds on belief, emotion, ignorance, and psychic instability. Humanity is vulnerable because it is divided, frightened, religious, and full of uncontrolled psykers. So the Emperor develops a plan, a very ambitious plan, a very shiny plan, a very I alone can fix this plan. And like most I alone can fix this plans, it goes incredibly badly. The Emperor's plan had two main parts. Part 1, unite humanity under one empire. Part 2, cut humanity off from dependence on the warp. This second part is where the Webway project comes in. The Webway is basically an ancient network of tunnels through reality used by the Eldar. Think of it like the galaxy's secret underground train system, except instead of delays and weird stains on the seats, it has psychic tunnels that let you travel without sailing directly through demon-infested space hell. The Emperor wanted to use the Webway so humanity could travel across the galaxy without relying on warp travel and navigators. This was actually a brilliant idea. 10 out of 10, very cool, very practical, would absolutely subscribe to this infrastructure project. Because if humanity could avoid the warp, it would be much harder for chaos to corrupt them. The problem was how the Emperor tried to get there. He decided humanity needed to abandon religion entirely. No gods, no worship, no superstition. Only reason, science, unity, and the occasional mass execution if you disagreed too loudly. This was the imperial truth. And on paper, it makes sense. If chaos feeds on worship, then stop worshiping. If demons manipulate belief, then remove belief. If religion causes division, then replace it with rationalism. Simple, clean, elegant. Also deeply stupid. Because the Emperor did not just say, "Do not worship chaos." He said, "Gods and demons are not real." Which is a bit like living in Australia and telling people spiders are a myth. You can say it all you want, mate. The spider is still in the bathroom. And now, nobody knows what to do when it starts whispering promises of eternal power. The Emperor's mistake was not opposing chaos. That part was smart. His mistake was assuming that ignorance would protect humanity better than knowledge. Instead of teaching people what chaos was, how it worked, and why it was dangerous, he treated the entire species like a child who could not be trusted with the stove. And then he handed several of his sons flamethrowers. Now we get to the primarchs. The Emperor creates 20 genetically engineered super sons to lead his armies and conquer the galaxy. This already sounds like a terrible idea. If you have 20 sons and every single one of them is 8 feet tall, emotionally unstable, and in command of a private army, that is not a family. That is a future Netflix documentary. The Primarchs are scattered across the galaxy by chaos, grow up on different nightmare planets, and each develops a different flavor of trauma. Let's do the speedrun. Lionel Johnson is secretive forest Batman. Fulgrim is perfectionism with a sword and hair care sponsorship. Perturabo is an unpaid intern with artillery. Jagatai Khan is speed, freedom, and probably unpaid speeding fines. Leman Russ is a furry-coated executioner with Viking branding. Rogel Dorn is a wall pretending to be a man. Conrad Kurz is evil Batman if Batman solved crime by becoming crime. Sanguinius is beautiful angel Jesus with depression. Ferrus Manus is angry metal dad. Angron is roid rage with brain nails. Rabute Gilliman is Microsoft Excel in power armor. Mortarion is a plague goth who hates his stepdad. Magnus is a Wikipedia nerd with one eye and zero impulse control. Horus is the favorite child, which is always a red flag. Lorgar is a religious nerd who desperately wants dad to say, "Good job, buddy." Vulcan is the nicest guy in the room, which in 40k still means he can burn your city down. Corvus Corax is emo stealth birdman. Alfarius and Omegon are either 2 people, 1 person, 5 people, or a tax loophole. And then there are the 2 missing primarchs, who probably did something so embarrassing Games Workshop had to redact them. Now here's where the Emperor's mistake becomes catastrophic. He does not explain chaos to these people. He does not properly prepare them. He does not sit them down and say, "Hey sons, just so you know, there are 4 evil psychic gods in another dimension who feed on emotion and will absolutely try to exploit your trauma. Fulgrim, do not touch weird swords. Magnus, do not answer suspicious space DMs. Lorgar, please stop building churches. Horus, if anyone named Erebus gives you advice, throw him into the sun." Instead, the Emperor keeps secrets. He gives half-truths. He expects obedience without trust. And this works for a while because the Emperor is powerful, charismatic, and covered in enough gold to blind a tax auditor. But it cannot last. Because the Primarchs are not machines. They are people. Very large, very dangerous people, but people. They have pride, jealousy, love, resentment, fear, insecurity, and daddy issues so dense they could bend light. And chaos is very, very good at exploiting those things. If we are looking for the specific moment where the Emperor's biggest mistake becomes unavoidable, we have to talk about Monarchia. Monarchia was the perfect city built by Lorgar and the Word-Bearers on the planet Kur. The problem? It was a city dedicated to worshipping the Emperor as a god. Now, the Emperor did not like being worshipped, which is understandable. What is less understandable is being a glowing, immortal psychic giant in golden armor, surrounded by angels, miracles, and prophecy, and then getting annoyed when people think you might be divine. My brother in Terra, you look like the final boss of Catholicism. So what does the Emperor do? Does he calmly explain the danger of worship? Does he educate Lorgar about chaos? Does he say, "Son, I understand your need for meaning, but religion is dangerous because belief empowers hostile entities in the warp"? No. He sends the Ultramarines to destroy Monarchia. Then he forces Lorgar and his entire legion to kneel in the ashes of their perfect city while he humiliates them. This is parenting by orbital bombardment. And this moment breaks Lorgar. Lorgar needed guidance. The Emperor gave him shame. Lorgar needed truth. The Emperor gave him silence. Lorgar needed emotional support. The Emperor gave him Gilliman, which is somehow worse. And after Monarchia, Lorgar goes looking for gods who will accept him. Unfortunately, he finds them. The Chaos Gods. And once Lorgar falls, the Horus Heresy becomes almost inevitable. Because Lorgar and Erebus begin spreading corruption through the legions. Horus gets wounded and manipulated. Fulgrim picks up the worst sword in galactic history. Magnus breaks the webway because he tries to warn the Emperor using forbidden psychic nonsense. Mortarion, Angron, Perturabo, and the rest fall for their own reasons. And suddenly, the Emperor's grand rational empire is on fire because nobody had a basic chaos safety seminar. 8 out of 10 plan. 0 out of 10 execution. Would not trust with a school excursion.
The Horus Heresy is often described as a civil war,
which is technically true, but emotionally, it is more like a galactic family argument where everyone has nuclear weapons and at least one person is possessed. Horus, the Emperor's favorite son, turns traitor. Half the Primarchs join him. The legions split. The Imperium tears itself apart. And all of this happens because the Emperor failed to understand one very simple thing. You cannot build trust through secrecy. You cannot defeat chaos by pretending it is not real. And you cannot create 20 demigod sons, emotionally neglect them, send them to conquer the galaxy, and then act surprised when some of them join Satan. The tragedy is that the Emperor was not completely wrong. Chaos is dangerous. Religion can empower warp entities. Humanity did need unity. The Webway project could have saved mankind from dependence on warp travel. The Emperor had a real plan. That is what makes it tragic. He was not some random idiot. He was a genius who made the classic genius mistake. He thought being right meant he did not need to explain himself. And because he was the Emperor, nobody could force him to. So the heresy reaches Terra. The traitors besiege the Imperial Palace. Sanguinius dies. Horus is finally killed. The Emperor is mortally wounded. And instead of leading humanity into a rational, enlightened future, he gets plugged into the Golden Throne like the world's angriest psychic battery. Great plan, lads. Very normal outcome. Now, fast forward 10,000 years. What happened to the Emperor's godless empire? It became the most aggressively religious civilization imaginable. The Imperium now worships the Emperor as a god, exactly the thing he did not want. The imperial truth is dead. Science is barely understood. Technology is treated like magic. Priests chant at machines. People burn heretics for having suspicious opinions. The Emperor, who wanted to kill superstition, is now the center of the largest religion in human history. That is irony so thick you could use it as Terminator armor. And the galaxy? Still awful. The Great Rift has split reality in half. Chaos is stronger than ever. Guilliman, also known as Big Blue, has returned and is desperately trying to run the Imperium like a functioning government, which is adorable. The Lion is back too, older, sadder, and seemingly less of a secretive forest weirdo, although, let's be honest, that bar was underground. But the Emperor's mistake still defines everything. The Imperium does not understand chaos properly. It fears knowledge. It burns questions. It confuses faith with survival. And humanity remains trapped in the very nightmare the Emperor tried to prevent. So what was the Emperor's biggest mistake? It was not simply creating the Primarchs. It was not simply being a terrible father. It was not even leaving the Great Crusade early to work on his secret Webway Lamborghini in the basement. The Emperor's biggest mistake was believing he could save humanity through control instead of trust. He hid the truth about chaos. He denied the reality of gods and demons. He punished faith without explaining why it was dangerous. He treated his sons like tools instead of people. And then, when those tools broke, they broke the galaxy with them. The Emperor wanted mankind to outgrow gods. Instead, he accidentally created the conditions for humanity to worship him as one. That is the funniest and most horrifying part of Warhammer 40,000. The Emperor won almost every battle, but he lost the argument. Because in the end, humanity did not become rational. It became religious. It did not escape the warp. It became more dependent on it than ever. And the man who wanted to free humanity from gods became the biggest god-shaped corpse in the galaxy. 10,000 years later, he is still sitting on the Golden Throne, holding reality together through sheer psychic spite, while trillions of humans pray to him every day. Dad of the Year? Absolutely not. But Grimdark Icon? Unfortunately, yes. And that is why the Emperor's biggest mistake was not just bad parenting. It was secrecy. It was arrogance. It was trying to defeat Space Hell by pretending Space Hell was fake. But what do you think? Was the Imperial truth the Emperor's biggest mistake? Was it Monarchia? Was it creating the Primarchs? Or was his real mistake not punting Erebus into a reactor the second he looked suspicious? Let me know in the comments. Also tell me which Primarch gets the worst Dad of the Year treatment, because honestly, the competition is disgusting. Like, subscribe, and stick around for more Grimderp, where we explain the worst galaxy imaginable using jokes, trauma, and aggressively simplified lore. Praise the Emperor. Or don't. He was weird about that.